Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time for yet another video concerning my team, Manchester City. And if you want to call this oversaturation, then go for it, because that's exactly what this is. The club's fortunes were obviously transformed by the arrival of Sheikh Mansour's riches in 2008, saving them from a potential bankruptcy after their previous owner, former Thai president Thaksin Shinawatra, had his assets frozen and was arrested in his homeland on allegations of corruption. Some of the best players in their history, be it Sergio Aguero, David Silva or Yaya Toure, have turned out for them in recent times, although of course there have been plenty of duds too. In this video, I thought I would put together an entire team of the worst players to have played for Manchester City since the 1st of September 2008, which was the day that the purchase of the club by the Sheikh was confirmed. To qualify, they had to have made at least one appearance for the club after that day, and they will be judged on their performances after that point and not before it. So for example, Richard Dunn's 8 years prior to the takeover are irrelevant for the purposes of this video. It would only be the 2008-09 season that I would examine, since he left for Aston Villa in the summer of 2009, although he doesn't feature anyway. Let's look at the 11 players who do though, in my take on the worst team of players to have played for the club since Sheikh Mansour's takeover in 2008. Goalkeeper, Claudio Bravo. For each of the other positions, I drafted up a long list and then whittled it down to the ones which I thought merited a place in the team, but for the goalkeeper position, no research was required apart from making sure that I remember the name Claudio Bravo. The Chilean was brought in by Pep Guardiola in his first summer in charge as a goalkeeper who was supposedly good with the ball at his feet, replacing fans' favourite Joe Hart in the process. But after a shaky debut in the derby win against Manchester United, in which he made an error leading to United's only goal of the game, the die was seemingly cast. He didn't really look comfortable in possession at all and wasn't much good at the goalkeeping fundamentals either, going on a run of conceding 7 shots on target in a row over the course of 3 games. In January 2017, he was dropped for Willy Caballero, and City then signed Ederson in the summer to replace him, who was looked 100 times more assured between the sticks than Bravo ever did. And although he did make the odd star performance in the cup competitions, his place in this particular team was never in doubt. Right wing back, Maicon. I'm going with a 5-2-1-2 formation, mostly so I can fit in as many defenders as possible, given that defence has oftentimes proved City's Achilles heel over the last 13 years, and at right wing back, it's a choice between 2 underwhelming Brazilians in the forms of Danilo and Maicon. Although Danilo wasn't exactly good, he was relatively versatile, filling in at both fullbacks and in midfield with moderate to limited success, and did occasionally look decent in attack, whereas Maicon didn't really bring anything to City's team during the season that he spent there. Once in the conversation of the best right backs in the world before Gareth Bale turned him inside out at the San Siro in 2010, Man City signed a pretty broken defender from Inter Milan in 2012 instead of the world-class one that would have made much more sense just a few years prior, and he wasn't able to dislodge Pablo Zabaleta as City's first choice, and especially because when he did play, he was pretty hopeless. He left to join Roma in 2013, where he did admittedly have a career renaissance, but he is one of those players who I genuinely forgot actually played for City, given how poor he was, so with that in mind, he has to feature here. Centre back, Eric Garcia. Centre back is the position with the most contenders, as one might have expected going into this video, and the likes of Tal Ben-Haim, Stefan Savic and Matej Nastasic are dishonourable mentions, with Nicolas Otamendi potentially having been a shoo-in if it weren't for the General's incredible 2017-18 campaign. Instead, and whilst this may seem a bit harsh given that he is so young, I have to go with Eric Garcia because I really was not impressed with him whenever I watched him play. The 20-year-old made his debut in 2019 in an 8-0 drubbing off Watford and was City's first choice centre-back alongside Aymeric Laporte once the Premier League returned after lockdown in June 2020, but even then he did show quite a few problems in terms of his positioning and tackling. His frailties were brutally exposed in 2020-21, and it speaks volumes that, in his 4 league starts, City conceded 12 goals, including 5 at home to Leicester and 3 away to both Brighton and Newcastle, with Garcia at fault for many of them. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure what Barcelona have seen in him to bring him in for free this summer. It may well prove to be a blessing for City in the future. Centre back, Martín Demichelis. The creme de la creme of awful defenders at the club over the past 13 years, Martín Demichelis wasn't exactly the best choice to partner Vincent Kompany and looked shaky whenever he played, always seemingly 1 minute away from a massive calamity. Signed by Manuel Pellegrini from Atletico Madrid in the summer of 2013, who had turned and signed him from Pellegrini's former club Malaga that very summer, Demichelis was slow and laborious for the most part, and although he did chip in with the odd goal here and there, I can't really say that redeems him all that much. What's more, his most iconic City image is probably him missing a tackle on Marcus Rashford that led to the Englishman scoring the winner on his Manchester derby debut in March 2016, especially when Katie Hopkins photoshopped her face onto Demichelis' face in criticism of Rashford's campaign to give school children free meals, which, of course, was summarily destroyed by the internet. When your most iconic moment is that, you know that there's no coming back, and Demichelis' place in this team is pretty much ironcast. Centre-back, Eliaquim Mangala. I really didn't want to include Eliaquim Mangala in this team because he did show a lot of promise whilst at Porto, and City shelling out £42 million on him back in 2014 as a centre-back who could have been the long-term answer to their partner for company did make sense, but ultimately he was nothing more than a big money flop. After impressing in his first game against Chelsea, keeping a rampant Diego Costa quiet, he then scored an own goal and conceded a penalty in his next game against Hull, and from then on he never looked comfortable, admitting to The Athletic that he struggled to cope with the intensity and physicality of the Premier League, which as a centre-back is quite worrying. Although he made 79 appearances and had spells in which he did look solid, for £42 million, which was a British record for a defender at the time, you're expecting a lot more than just some good patches of form, and he was loaned out twice to Valencia and then Everton, before eventually moving to the former on a permanent basis in 2018 to end his nightmare stint in England. Left wing back, Benjamin Mendy. Look, I love Benjamin Mendy as a character, with his charisma and enthusiasm radiating through to other members of the squad, but as a player, he just hasn't been able to live up to his £50 million price tag for varying reasons, albeit some of them through no fault of his own. In his first few games after joining from Monaco in 2017, he looked a real force in attack, linking up brilliantly with Leroy Sané down the left-hand side, but then he suffered a cruciate ligament rupture in September before undergoing knee surgery the following season, restricting him to just 23 games in all competitions over his first 2 years at the club. Ever since, he has shown flashes of brilliance, but his defensive reliability has often been called into question, especially against Wolves in December 2019 when, instead of clearing the ball in the penalty area, he let it bounce many times unnecessarily before losing it and seeing Adama Traore square it to Raul Jimenez to score and then Wolves to go on and win the game 3-2. All that considered, and although I did originally have Javier Garcia in this position, I think Mendy has to take up a spot in this team for now, albeit with a lot of regret attached to it, and at 27 there's still some time for him to turn it around, but it doesn't speak good of you when you're overtaken in the left back position by an attacking midfielder. Central midfield, Javi Garcia. Javi Garcia is the second player to feature who was signed in the summer of 2012, and he won't be the last either, and realistically, probably all of the players who signed for City that summer could have featured in this team, apart from Richard Wright, given that he didn't play one game for City at all during his 4 years as a player there. Garcia started off well enough, scoring on his debut against Stoke, but he was extremely sluggish off the ball and didn't possess the passing range needed to succeed in this City team, and he was reduced to a bit part player before too long. I never really saw a player in there that looked like he was up to the task of being part of a title challenging squad, and although City were able to recoup £13 million of the £16 million that they spent on him when they sold him to Zenit in 2014, his performances on the pitch land him squarely in the centre of the pitch in this abomination of a team. Central midfield, Jack Rodwell. Yet another player from 2012's terrible spending spree, Jack Rodwell was seen as the next big hope for England's midfield after a series of stellar displays for Everton, and he was snapped up by City for what seemed a bargain at the time of £13 million. However, things quickly went south for Rodwell, as he missed a large chunk of the 2012-13 campaign through injury, making just 15 appearances in all competitions and failing to impress in most of them, and upon Manuel Pellegrini's arrival, he was deemed surplus to requirements, playing just 109 league minutes all season, with 90 of them coming in a 0-0 draw at Stoke. His style was fading fast, and it seemed as though a 2014 move to Sunderland would prove the doubters wrong and revitalise his career, as he clearly just needed game time to prove himself, but he somehow managed to do even worse on Wearside, going 39 matches without winning a Premier League game whilst earning ridiculous wages and putting in turgid performances on a regular basis, with the Evening Chronicle and Sunderland Echo both ranking him as the worst signing in Sunderland's history. That is all irrelevant when judging him for this video, but his demise well and truly began with his move to the Etihad in 2012, and he never lived up to the potential that he showed whilst at Everton, with his inflated ego certainly not helping matters either. Attacking midfield, Scott Sinclair. I know he is primarily a winger, and I promise I'm not just picking players who were brought in the summer transfer window of 2012 for the sake of it, but if we're being honest, what was the point of Scott Sinclair even being at Manchester City? He was brought in with seemingly no other purpose than to fill the homegrown quota requirement at the club, although admittedly he had impressed in the previous 2 seasons with Swansea City, and for £8 million maybe he could have come good at the Etihad. Long story short, he didn't. After his first 2 games, he started just 1 more in all competitions over the next 3 years, coming in a dead rubber Champions League clash against Borussia Dortmund, which City lost 1-0, and in the league he would have just 74 more minutes of action after September 2012, the same total as he managed in his very first game for the club, and like Rodwell, he didn't really show much promise in any of them. He finally ended his horror stint at Manchester City by joining Aston Villa in 2015 and struggled once more, before finally finding good form again at Celtic, but after falling out of favour once more, he moved to Preston in 2019, where he remains. Striker, Roque Santa Cruz. If I didn't understand Scott Sinclair's transfer to City in 2012, then Roque Santa Cruz's move 3 years prior makes even less sense, and I didn't even think that was actually possible. Upon moving to Blackburn in 2007 from Bayern Munich, he had a phenomenal campaign, scoring 23 goals including 19 in the league, but in the following campaign he struggled with injuries and could only manage 6 goals from 23 games. City weren't deterred by this at all, as Santa Cruz came in as one of 3 new strikers alongside Emmanuel Adebayor and Carlos Tevez in 2009, which surely highlights City's early recklessness once flushed with cash as much as anything, but as was to be probably expected, he didn't do well. For a £17.5 million transfer, a 4-goal return from 22 games isn't exactly value for money, and upon Roberto Mancini's arrival at the club, he was frozen out completely, making just 2 substitute appearances in 2010-11 and actively pushing for a move away from the then called City of Manchester Stadium. He got it in 2012 after 2 loan spells at Blackburn and Real Betis when he moved to Malaga, but remarkably, at the age of 40, he is still playing for his first club, Club Olimpia, in his homeland of Paraguay. Striker, Wilfried Bony. Not long ago, I ranked Wilfried Bony as Man City's worst signing in the last 10 years, seemingly forgetting the existence of Martín Demichelis and Claudio Bravo in the process, but I'm afraid that, despite competition from the likes of Joe and Benjani, he has to take up the last place in this 11. Bony arrived in the Premier League with Swansea in 2013, and over the course of the next 1.5 seasons, he averaged just under 1 goal every other game, and Man City, who'd seen Bony terrorise their defence on a couple of occasions, decided to bring the Ivorian in for £28 million. The fee looked eye-watering from the get-go, and it was made even more so by Bony's consistent troubles throughout, albeit he was beset by minor injuries and suffered from malaria, which hindered his progress, but a return of just 10 goals in 46 games in all competitions, with just 6th in the league, isn't really that good. As soon as Pep Guardiola arrived, Bony was transfer listed, joining Stoke on loan and then returning to the Liberty Stadium in 2017, but by then, the bullish striker we first saw in the Premier League had well and truly disappeared, and at the moment, he is currently a free agent, alongside 2 others, namely Mangala and Rodwell, who feature in this 11. And that just about wraps up today's video looking at the worst 11 of players to have played for Manchester City since the 1st of September 2008 when Sheikh Mansour took over the club. If you disagree with any of my choices, let me know which players you would swap out and who for down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, of course, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you have not done so already, and ring the little notification bell so you get notified whenever I upload a video straight away. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.